Hi, I would first like to thank everyone for your suggestions, your criticisms, your encouragement. These all inspire me to continue. And also thank you very much for those who have decided to subscribe. I appreciate that too. That means that what I'm doing makes a difference to me. Now, I want to address some things in this episode, so let's get started. In a previous episode, I made mention of an area in Kansas that piqued my interest. This area was always empty, and I always walked by it when I was a child walking to school, and I always wondered why there was nothing ever there. I believe only 2 houses were there when I was growing up, and it never seemed to get anything. So now I'm focusing back on that area to see if there's something possible to do. And I thought the tiny houses would go good in this area, so let me take a closer look at that. In my visit, I drove over to this area instead of doing the Google, and I walked down in there to see what will be the benefits of it. It's not a bad area. It's quiet, it's very secluded, but it's in the backyards of other areas in the neighborhood. But I still think that it would be a good area. I sincerely believe that nobody would even be interested in putting a home down there because no one has done it up to this point. It has utility poles. That means that there's power in the area. That means there's also the possibility that there's sewers in the area. And so it wouldn't necessarily be an off-grid idea, but I do think that, it would be a pretty cool area for some of the tiny homes that I have looked at. I see a bunch of Incred-I-Boxes in this area. The area that I'm looking at right now is, I believe it's 1.6 acres. It's actually in the city land bank, and as of right now, I haven't seen anybody express any interest in doing anything here because it's down in a gulch. So, pretty good idea. Let me see what I can figure out with it. Now, this idea was one of the ideas that I wanted to put in that area, but a gentleman named Bill gave me another direction to consider. He sent me these plans, and then he sent me a video of some of the things that he was even considering doing. So I paid very close attention to it, and I started thinking. He is very interested in the veterans and handicapped and things like that, and that was something that I really didn't take into consideration when I started designing some of these ideas that I have. So I'm going to continue to use this and create a theme and see what else I can do to address what he sent to me. Some years ago, I was commissioned to do a job for a gentleman in Kansas City, Kansas, who has cerebral palsy. He spends the majority of his time in a wheelchair. He can't really get to a basement in the event of a tornado. So I had to design a FEMA-type above-ground storm shelter for him to go into in the event of the tornado, which is at the back of his garage. This is significant because right now in Kansas City, Kansas, there's an issue about designing any homes above ground that are on slab on grade, and a tiny home would fall into that same category. You can't put a basement on a tiny home, so I have some ideas that I want to share as far as what we need to do in the future if you're going to have a tiny home in an area where there are tornadoes such as Tennessee, Kansas, etc. This is an accessory dwelling unit that I designed for a couple in California. They designed it for their dad, who was in a wheelchair, and I felt that I needed to probably use this idea as a part of the premise for me to create a tiny home with a couple of Incred-I-Boxes. First of all, the one thing that I'm going to do in this particular episode is not try to pay too much attention to where windows and doors and things are, because I don't think that this has ever really been addressed. The one thing that's really important also is that, these things like wheelchair ramps and lifts and all these other things, they're not cheap. So I'm not going to pay attention to that because this is strictly a concept. If anyone wants to try to do something like this, you probably should take something like that into consideration. And so that's what I'm going to do as far as presenting this idea. There are 4 areas that I'm focusing on: the kitchen area, the transition that I have going into the bathroom, and the transition that I have going into the bedroom. These are all areas that require a lot of space, and so I'm focusing on that. I'm also focusing on the fact that there are no real areas with the material that's in the tiny home for things like electrical conduit and things like that because of the material that's being used. So that's the reason why you see the beams in there. That's just another conceptual idea. Now, I felt that I should share this kitchen layout for this particular idea in this manner because I want to show a few things. For example, the kick base under the cabinets is 9 inches deep and is 9 inches tall. That is to accommodate for a wheelchair and the kick base for a wheelchair. The item on the right is a cabinet height refrigerator. And I felt that I should share this with you guys, and so that you want to take that into consideration when you're designing a kitchen for a person in a wheelchair. Also pay close attention to the cabinet heights. They're not stock items that you can get in a Home Depot or a Lowe's or something like that. These are designed specifically for people in wheelchairs. So the counter height is going to be 32 inches, and the bottom of the base of the wall cabinets is at 48 inches. You should pay pretty close attention to that, guys. Now, I just wanted to create a really quick little simulation of being in a wheelchair and going up the ramp and going into the Incred-I-Box tiny home. I wanted to throw people in there with wheelchairs in certain areas just to show how they would fit in relation to the space. Notice the cabinets are not the same ones I put in the elevation, but you get the principle. Also here, I wanted to show briefly why I couldn't put a singular bathroom into this idea. And look up at the beams. That is so that I can actually allow some lights, like chandelier lights, to be hung from the ceiling. I didn't think that you could do that with the normal way that it's built, so that was just an idea that I threw in there. Also, the area that was most important to me was this bathroom and getting into the shower area. The shower area is kind of tough because you don't really have the 5-foot circle to work within. So if you look to the right, I actually put a folding down seat in there. So that was just an idea. So there's my idea. Now, one thing I did notice was that with the ramp idea, you could actually hook up 2 units to the same platform. So I thought that that would be a good idea that you could use so that you can get more bang for your buck. Also, what I noticed too is that if two people are together, or 2 families are together, 2 individuals, then you can use something such as the above ground shelters. I'm including Midwest storm shelters because it is local, but these are all over the country, and all you would have to do is put them on a platform and share them between 2 houses. They're not that expensive comparatively speaking, so give me your thoughts. That's all I can ask.